Welcome back. This channel exists because of your support. Subscribe, hit like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Now let's get into the story. She said it while sorting through the mail, casual as commenting on the weather. I'm not sure this marriage is right anymore. I was sitting at the kitchen table in our Midtown Atlanta condo, finishing up a project proposal on my laptop. It was a Saturday morning, the kind where sunlight streamed through our windows and made everything look deceptively peaceful. The words hung in the air for maybe 3 seconds before I looked up at her. Jessica was standing by the counter, holding a credit card bill in one hand, not even looking at me. Just standing there in her yoga pants and oversized sweater, sorting mail like she'd just mentioned we needed milk. Any normal husband might have dropped what he was doing, started asking questions, maybe even panicked a little. Not me. I looked at her, really looked at her, and then did something she clearly wasn't expecting. I nodded. Finally, we agree on something. The look on her face was priceless. Pure shock mixed with confusion, like she'd just watched someone agree that the sky is blue but somehow found it surprising. She stopped mid-reach for another envelope and stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "What do you mean?" she asked, and her voice had lost that casual confidence from just seconds before. Exactly what I said. You're absolutely right. I closed my laptop and gave her my full attention for what felt like the first time in months. This marriage isn't working. I've been thinking the same thing for a while now. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. This wasn't going according to whatever script she'd had in her head. I could practically see the gears turning as she tried to figure out her next move. "But don't you want to try to fix it?" she asked. And there it was. The expected response she'd been fishing for. The desperate plea, the promise to change, the emotional breakdown that would put her back in control of the narrative. Fix what exactly? I leaned back in my chair, genuinely curious about her answer. The constant criticism? The way you talk about me to your friends like I'm some kind of embarrassment? Or maybe the part where you dismiss everything I say before I even finish saying it? Her face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Anger, defensiveness, then something that looked almost like panic when she realized I wasn't playing the role she'd cast me in. "You're being dramatic," she said, defaulting to her usual tactic of making me feel like my concerns were invalid. "Am I?" I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through my calendar. February 18th. You told Todd and Melissa I was socially awkward when I told a story at dinner. February 3rd. You said my motorcycle project was a waste of space and money. January 20th. You rolled your eyes when I suggested we visit my brother in Boston. I looked up at her. Should I keep going? Or do you get the picture? The silence that followed was different from our usual uncomfortable silences. This one had weight to it, like the air right before a storm breaks. "I didn't mean," she started, but I held up a hand. "No, you meant it. All of it. And you know what? That's fine. People grow apart, priorities change, whatever. But here's what's going to happen next." I found the contact I'd saved last month and hit call, putting it on speaker. It went straight to voicemail, which was perfect. "Hi, this is Ben Fletcher calling for attorney Mitchell Bradshaw. I'd like to schedule a consultation about starting divorce proceedings. My wife and I have mutually agreed that our marriage isn't working, so I'd like to get the ball rolling. Please call me back Monday morning. Thanks." I hung up and looked at her. There. Problem solved. She was staring at me like I'd just announced I was moving to Mars. You didn't even give me a chance to explain what I meant." "Explain what?" "You said the marriage isn't right." I agreed. "What's to explain?" I stood up and stretched, feeling lighter than I had in months. "Unless you're saying you didn't mean what you said. Because that would mean you were just trying to manipulate me into some kind of emotional reaction." The way her face changed told me everything I needed to know. Bingo. "That's not." "I wasn't," she stammered, and for the first time in our entire relationship, she was the one scrambling for words. "Look, I'll make this easy for you. You're right. This marriage isn't working. It hasn't been working for a long time, and we both know it. The difference is I'm not interested in pretending otherwise anymore." I picked up my keys from the counter. "I'm going to grab dinner somewhere. When I get back, I'll start moving my stuff into the guest room. We can figure out the details like adults." "Where are you going?" The question came out sharper than she probably intended. "Does it matter? We just established we're getting divorced." I paused at the door and turned back to her. "But hey, at least now you won't have to worry about being embarrassed by me anymore." The drive gave me time to think, and honestly, I felt better than I had in years. No more walking on eggshells. No more second-guessing every word that came out of my mouth. No more pretending that constant criticism was normal in a marriage. My phone buzzed with 3 texts from Jessica while I was eating at a diner in Virginia Highland. I didn't bother reading them. Whatever she had to say now, she'd had 2 years to say when it might have mattered. When I got home with my takeout, she was pacing in the living room like a caged animal. The mail was exactly where she'd left it, scattered across the counter, which told me she'd spent the entire time I was gone trying to process what had just happened. "We need to talk," she said as soon as I walked through the door. "No, we don't." I headed straight for the kitchen. "We talked. You said the marriage isn't right." I agreed. End of conversation. "But I didn't mean we should get divorced." I stopped and looked at her. Really looked at her. "Then what exactly did you mean?" And there it was again. That moment where she realized she didn't have a good answer because the truth was she'd been trying to manipulate me, and it had backfired spectacularly. "I meant maybe we could work on things," she said weakly. "Work on what? You've spent 2 years telling me everything I do wrong. You've made it clear that I'm not the husband you want. So why would you want to work on keeping something that doesn't work?" I opened my food container and grabbed a fork. "Face it, you got exactly what you asked for." My phone rang at 8 sharp Sunday morning. Mitchell Bradshaw had excellent response time. "Mr. Fletcher? I got your message. How long have you been thinking about this?" I was in the guest room with the door locked. Jessica had tried to talk to me through it twice already. Actively, about 9 months. Passively, maybe 18. "And your wife initiated the conversation?" She said, and I quote, "I'm not sure this marriage is right anymore." I agreed. There was a pause on the other end. "You agreed?" I took her at her word. Was that wrong? Mitchell Bradshaw actually laughed. "No, Mr. Fletcher. That was perfect. Can you come see me tomorrow at 2? Jessica's pacing stopped outside the door. She'd heard the appointment time. Monday afternoon, I sat in Mitchell Bradshaw's office in Buckhead, looking out over the city through floor-to-ceiling windows. His office was all glass and dark wood, the kind of place that charged $400 an hour and earned every penny. "You're more prepared than most clients who've been planning for years," he said, flipping through the folder I'd brought. I wasn't planning. I was just paying attention. "Walk me through the statement she made." I explained the context, her exact words, my response. When I got to the part about calling him on speaker, he smiled. "And you have documentation of the pattern?" I provided my timeline. Text messages where she criticized my clothing choices. Photos of social media posts she'd deleted after I called her out. Posts where she'd made jokes about my hobbies to her friends. Bank statements showing my separate savings account, opened 9 months ago when she'd said I was wasting money on motorcycle parts. "Georgia is a no-fault state, but this helps if she contests," Mitchell said. "Which she will, once she realizes you're serious." "She already knows I'm serious. She knows you filed. She doesn't know you mean it. There's a difference." He pulled out forms. "Georgia requires a 30-day waiting period, but we can get the separation agreement drafted now." "Any children?" "No." "Property?" "The condo's in both names." "I don't want it. I've already started looking at apartments." He looked impressed. "You really have been paying attention." I signed the initial paperwork and walked back to my car. My phone showed 5 missed calls from Jessica and a text. "Where are you?" I didn't respond. When I got home that evening, Jessica was sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of brochures and her laptop open. "I've been doing research," she announced. "I found an excellent therapist, Dr. Linda Olson. She specializes in couples therapy." "Good for you. Personal growth is always positive." "For us," she clarified. "She can see us Thursday. We don't need couples therapy. We need separate divorce attorneys. I have mine." Her face went pale. "You already hired a lawyer?" "Had a consultation today. Filed the separation paperwork." "You can't make a decision like this without discussing it with me." I set my bag down and looked at her calmly. "I didn't make the decision. You did when you said the marriage wasn't right. I just took the next logical step." "I'm hiring a lawyer," she said, grabbing her phone like it was a weapon. "Good idea. Mine said you'd want representation." Over the next 3 days, I viewed apartments during my lunch breaks. The first was too small, like a punishment I'd be inflicting on myself. The second was too expensive for what it offered. But the third apartment in Ansley Park had character, hardwood floors, exposed brick, and most importantly, garage space in the building. "How much clearance in the garage?" I asked the realtor. Enough for a car, and then some. I need space for a motorcycle project. Should be perfect then. I submitted the application immediately. The approval email arrived Friday morning while I was at work. I smiled and started looking at my calendar, planning the move. When I got home Friday evening, Jessica was holding my tablet. Ansley Park? Really? That's a $2,400 a month neighborhood. And where did you get that kind of money? We share finances. We share some finances. I've had a separate account for 9 months. You've been planning this. Her voice rose. No, I've been protecting myself. There's a difference. From what? I'm your wife. You're the person who just told me our marriage wasn't right. Past tense. I took the tablet from her hands and started changing passwords while she watched. Then I grabbed my overnight bag and headed for the door. Where are you going? To stay with my brother in Boston for the weekend. I'll be back Monday to start packing. The drive to Leo's took 14 hours, but I needed the space to think. My older brother took one look at me when I arrived and opened a beer. So she finally said it out loud? Saturday morning. Like she was commenting on the weather. And you? Agreed with her. Filed Monday. Leo laughed. You know, I always liked Jessica, but I liked you more. You're doing the right thing. I spent the weekend at Leo's, and we barely talked about the divorce. We watched basketball, worked on his deck project, and reminded me what it felt like to just exist without constant judgment. I drove back early Monday morning, my head clearer than it had been in years. Wednesday night of the second week, Todd and Melissa invited us to the varsity. Jessica thought it was an intervention. It was, just not the kind she expected. Jessica said you just suddenly decided to leave. Melissa said carefully after we'd ordered our burgers. Is that what she said? She mentioned you might be going through something, Todd added. Maybe a midlife crisis? I'm 34. Little early for that. I took a sip of my Coke. But let me ask you something, Todd. How many times have you heard Jessica criticize something I said or did in front of you? Todd and Melissa exchanged a look. I mean, she has opinions, Todd said slowly. How many times has she rolled her eyes when I was talking? Made comments about my choices? Called me embarrassing or awkward in social settings? Melissa's expression changed. She does do that a lot. So when she told me our marriage wasn't right, was I supposed to disagree with her? Pretend she didn't mean it? Or take her seriously? When you put it that way, Todd said. She said the marriage wasn't working. I agreed. Everything else is just her being surprised that I listened. The conversation shifted after that. They asked about the apartment, about the divorce timeline, about how I was doing. By the time we left, I could tell they understood. Jessica had created this situation. I'd just had the courage to acknowledge it. Saturday afternoon, I found myself in a motorcycle shop in Virginia Highland. Vintage Cycle Works was exactly the kind of place I'd been avoiding for 2 years. Too much temptation, too much money Jessica said I was wasting. But I wasn't married anymore. Or wouldn't be soon. A woman was working on a Norton Commando when I walked in, grease on her hands, dark hair tied back. She looked up. Help you find something? Parts for a '69 Triumph Bonneville. My grandfather's bike. It's been in storage. Storage is death for these bikes. She wiped her hands on a rag. What made you pull it out now? I have garage space now. And time. She smiled knowingly. Divorce? I must have looked surprised because she laughed. You get a radar for it. The finally have time for my stuff energy. I'm Claire, by the way. Ben. Come on, Ben. Let me show you what we have. She walked me through the parts, discussing restoration approaches with the kind of competence that came from years of experience. No flirtation, no agenda. Just shared passion for bikes. We do a Sunday morning coffee ride, she mentioned as I was paying. Leave from here at 8, loop up through the mountains, back by noon. You should join sometime. I'll be there. As I left with my parts, I realized I was smiling. Not because of Claire specifically, though she seemed nice, but because I'd just spent an hour talking about something I loved with someone who didn't roll their eyes or make comments about wasting money. Monday through Wednesday of the third week, I moved out. Jessica stayed with her sister, which made everything easier. I took my books, my clothes, the furniture I'd owned before we married. I photographed each room before leaving, Mitchell's advice, and left a note with my keys. Utilities transferred effective April 1st. Attorney will contact you about settlement. Wednesday afternoon, I made the trip to the storage facility across town where my grandfather's Triumph had been sitting for 2 years. The dust-covered tarp came off like shedding old skin. The bike underneath was rough but salvageable, exactly like me. I arranged for a tow to my new apartment, excited to finally have the space and time to bring it back to life. Thursday morning, Claire showed up with her truck to help move the motorcycle from the tow company's drop-off into my garage. "Nice place," she said, looking around my new apartment. "Good garage setup. Thanks. First time I've had space that's actually mine in years." "How's that feel?" "Like I can finally breathe." We secured the bike in the garage, and she stayed for a beer afterward. We talked about restoration plans, about her shop, about nothing in particular. When she left, she paused at the door. "See you Sunday morning? 8 sharp?" "I'll be there." Friday evening, my phone rang. "Jessica, you took everything." "I took my things." "You gutted our home." "I took my books, my clothes, and the furniture I owned before we married." "You still have everything we bought together." "You're really doing this. You're really leaving me." "You said the marriage wasn't right. This is what that looks like." "But I didn't mean it like that." "Then you should have been more careful with your words. Words have consequences." "You're being cruel." "No, I'm being clear. There's a difference." I hung up. In the background, I could hear the sound of my own life, my music playing, my space, my choices. It was the sound of freedom. The first mediation session happened on a Tuesday in early April. Jessica arrived with her attorney and her mother, a power play that might have worked 6 months ago, but just seemed desperate now. "My client believes this is a rash decision made in haste," Jessica's attorney began. Mitchell didn't even blink. "The decision was your client's." She initiated the conversation about the marriage not working. That was taken out of context. "Dr. Olson has provided a letter. Dr. Olson has been seeing your client for about a month. That's not enough time to establish context." Jessica leaned forward. "I was having a bad day, Ben. I didn't mean we should throw away 8 years." "Which part didn't you mean? The words, or the 2 years of behavior that led to the words?" "I brought a letter from my therapist explaining. Your therapist started seeing you after you made the statement. She's working from your narrative." Mitchell slid a folder across the table. "My client also has documentation. Would you like to review the timeline of incidents?" Jessica's attorney spent 20 minutes reading through my documentation. Text messages, photos of deleted social media posts, my separate bank account records, all properly disclosed. The timeline of criticisms and dismissals, each one dated and detailed. When she looked up, her expression had changed. "My client is willing to agree to a clean division if we can expedite the process." The mediation ended with an agreement. No alimony. We were both employed professionals. Property split down the middle. Clean, simple, final. In the parking lot, Jessica caught up with me. "You really documented everything." "I really listened to everything." "There's a difference." A week later, Jessica called asking for a joint therapy session with Dr. Olson. "Just one," she said, to show good faith. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Dr. Olson's office was carefully neutral, designed to put people at ease. Jessica was already there when I arrived, tissues at the ready. "Jessica tells me you agreed to divorce after one statement she made," Dr. Olson began. "Is that how she characterized it?" "She said it was a moment of doubt, not a decision." "Did she tell you she said, 'I'm not sure this marriage is right anymore'?" "Not I'm having doubts." "Not I'm struggling." "She said the marriage wasn't right." "And you immediately filed for divorce?" I agreed with her assessment and took appropriate action. Without trying to understand what she meant, I understood perfectly. She'd been showing me what she meant for 2 years. The words just made it explicit. Dr. Olson shifted in her seat. "Jessica feels you overreacted to a momentary expression of frustration." "Dr. Olson, in your professional opinion, if someone tells you your relationship isn't right, should you believe them or dismiss what they're saying?" The pause that followed told me everything. She'd been coaching Jessica to reframe her words, and I'd just trapped her in her own logic. Because I'm realizing this session isn't about helping us. It's about validating Jessica's narrative that I'm the unreasonable one. I stood up. "I hope therapy actually helps you, Jessica, just not as a tool against me." I left without waiting for a response. The following Sunday, I showed up at Vintage Cycle Works at 8 sharp for the group ride. Claire introduced me to the other riders, and we headed north into the mountains. We stopped for coffee at a cafe in Decatur around 10, and I spotted Todd and Melissa at a corner table inside. Todd waved us over, clearly surprised to see me. "Ben, didn't know you rode," Todd said, eyeing the Triumph parked outside. My grandfather's bike. Just getting back into it. Claire and I chatted with them for a few minutes. As we were heading back to the bikes, I saw Todd pull out his phone and snap a photo of us standing together, helmets in hand. He gave me a thumbs up, and we rode off. The next Saturday, I met Claire for coffee, which turned into dinner at an Italian place in Inman Park. We talked about books, about travel, about her work with motorcycles, and my work in project management. Real conversation where both people actually listened. "How are you doing with everything?" she asked over dessert. Honestly, better than I expected. I thought I'd feel sad or angry, but mostly I just feel free. That's healthy. My ex-wife is having what you might call a moment of clarity, I said, showing her the string of texts from earlier in the week. She knows I'm seeing someone. Todd posted that photo he took of us at the cafe last Sunday. Claire glanced at the messages and winced. That's a lot of emotional dumping. She's the one who said the marriage wasn't working. But apparently when I agreed with her, that wasn't part of her plan. Some people like to create problems they can then solve dramatically, Claire said. Makes them feel important. When you solve the problem quietly and efficiently, you take away their starring role. Later, walking to our cars, she took my hand. It felt natural. Easy. Nothing like the constant tension I'd lived with for 2 years. The divorce hearing in early June was brief. Jessica showed up with a letter from a new therapist, apparently Dr. Olson, and she had parted ways, claiming the original statement was made during a depressive episode. The judge read it, looked at Jessica, and asked, "Did you make the statement attributed to you?" "Yes, but did you mean it when you said it?" Long pause. I was frustrated. "So yes, divorce granted." The gavel fell. 8 years, over in less than 15 minutes. In the parking lot, Jessica was waiting by my car. "You really did it. You actually went through with it." "We both did. You with your words, me with my actions." "I never thought you'd actually leave." "Then you didn't know me very well." Which explains a lot. What if I said I made a mistake? What if I said I've changed? I'd say you're 3 months too late. But people can change. Maybe they can. But you didn't want to change when it mattered. You wanted me to stay the same and accept being treated poorly. I never meant to hurt you. Maybe not. But you did. Consistently. For 2 years. And when you finally said what you'd been showing me all along, I listened. That's the part you can't forgive, that I actually heard you. So there's no chance? No, there's not. Because of her? That motorcycle woman? Because of me. Because I finally chose myself. Claire has nothing to do with why we ended. She just shows me what healthy looks like. I got in my car and drove away. In the rearview mirror, I could see Jessica still standing there. Then I turned the corner, and she disappeared from view. By late August, the Triumph was running. Claire had been helping me every Saturday, and what started as mechanical assistance had evolved into something more. We'd had the "what are we doing" conversation 3 weeks ago and landed on seeing where this goes, which felt exactly right. "Hand me that torque wrench," she said from under the bike. "How tight?" "Feel it. The bike will tell you." When the engine fired up for the first time, the sound of that British twin echoing through my garage, we both grinned like idiots. "Your grandfather would be proud," Claire said. "He always said these bikes were therapy. Didn't understand it until now." What changed? I had time to do the work, and space to think while doing it. I shut the engine off. I realized my marriage ended 2 years before Jessica said those words. The divorce just made it official. "How do you feel about that?" "Grateful." She finally gave me permission to leave. Claire's hand found mine. We sat there on the garage floor, backs against the bike, and I realized this was what peace felt like. Not the absence of conflict, but the presence of someone who chose to be there. The Sunday morning rides had become a regular thing. By September, I knew all 7 riders by name. Their stories, their bikes, their own journeys through divorce and reinvention. We'd become more than a riding group. We'd become friends. One Sunday morning, as we gathered at our usual meeting spot at Vintage Cycle Works, a new rider asked about my bike. "Nice Triumph," he said. "What year?" 69. "My grandfather's. Finished restoring it a few weeks ago." "How long did that take?" 6 months. "Had some other life changes that freed up time." He nodded knowingly. "Divorce project. I've been there too." Everyone laughed, and I realized how much this group had become part of my new normal. We rode north out of the city, taking 2-lane highways through the mountains. Formation riding, swooping through curves, no thoughts except the road ahead and the engine beneath me. Claire rode alongside on her Norton, and at every stop sign we'd exchange glances that said everything without words. By October, my new life had fully taken shape. Todd and Melissa hosted a dinner party, and Claire fit naturally into the friend group. "How's Jessica doing?" Todd asked over dessert. "Anyone heard?" "I saw her on Facebook," Melissa said. "Doing that whole finding myself thing. Lots of yoga and self-help posts." "Good for her," I said, and meant it. Genuinely. "That's very mature of you," Claire said. "It's honest. I hope she figures out what she wants. Just wasn't going to wait around while she did." Later, driving Claire home, she was quiet. "What are you thinking?" I asked. "That you handled everything better than most people would." I just listened to what she said and believed her. Everything else followed from that. On a Tuesday evening in mid-October, my doorbell rang. I was in the garage working on the bike when I heard it. Through the window, I could see Jessica standing on my front porch, looking nervous. I took my time wiping the grease off my hands before answering the door. "Nice place," she said. "The motorcycle looks good. What do you need, Jessica?" "I wanted to see you. To talk." "About?" "About us. About what happened." I leaned against the door frame. "What happened is you said our marriage wasn't right." I agreed. "We got divorced. That's the entire story. I've been in therapy. Real therapy this time. Dr. Olson and I don't work together anymore. I found someone who actually challenges me." "Good. I'm glad you're doing that work." I figured out why I said what I said. Why I treated you the way I did. She took a breath. "I was scared. Scared of being happy because I thought if I was happy, something bad would happen. So I sabotaged everything good, including you. That takes courage to recognize. Thank you for telling me. I want to try again. I'm different now. I understand what I did wrong." I looked at this woman who'd once been the center of my world, who'd slowly chipped away at my self-worth until I'd forgotten what it felt like to be respected. And I felt something I didn't expect, sadness for her, but not for us. "I believe you," I said. "I believe you've grown and changed. So I'm happy for you. Genuinely. But that doesn't change anything between us." "Why not?" "Because you had 8 years to do this work while we were married. You chose not to. You chose to treat me like an inconvenience. And when I finally heard what you'd been telling me all along, I left. But I've changed. And I'm glad. Truly. But I've changed too. I've learned what it feels like to be with someone who chooses me every day, who respects me, who doesn't need therapy to figure out that I'm worth treating well." "Claire." "Yes. But even if there was no Claire, the answer would be the same. Because I finally chose myself, Jessica. And I'm not giving that up." She was crying now, genuine tears that looked different from all the times before. "I'm sorry. For all of it. I know. And I accept your apology. But that doesn't mean we go backwards. Can we at least be friends? Someday maybe. But not now. You need to move forward without me in your life." "I don't know how. The same way I did. One day at a time." I walked her to the door. She paused on the threshold. "Be happy, Ben. You deserve it. You too, Jessica. You deserve to figure out who you are." After she left, I stood there for a moment, then went back to the garage. My phone buzzed with a text from Claire. "Still coming over tonight?" "On my way in 10. The last Saturday in October, Claire and I took a weekend trip up to the Blue Ridge Parkway in North Carolina. 2 bikes, open roads, and fall colors stretching for miles. We stopped at an overlook, removed our helmets, and leaned against the stone wall. The view stretched out below us, mountains layered in autumn gold and red, disappearing into blue distance. "What are you thinking about?" Claire asked. "How different my life is now than 8 months ago." "Better. Immeasurably." "Any regrets?" "Only that I didn't listen to myself sooner. That I waited for permission to leave instead of just leaving." "We all do that," Claire said. "Wait for the other person to admit it's over." Jessica finally did that work. Showed up last week, apologized, explained everything. "How do you feel about that?" "Grateful. Not because I want her back, but because she's finally taking responsibility. That's growth." "And you?" "I'm exactly where I want to be. Right here. Right now." She kissed me, and in that moment, everything made sense. The painful conversation that started it all. The decision to take Jessica at her word. The months of rebuilding my life from scratch. My phone buzzed. Text from Leo. "How's the trip?" I snapped a photo of the view and sent it to him. His response came immediately. "Proud of you, little brother." Claire didn't ask, didn't need to. She understood that some things didn't require explanation. We got back on our bikes and continued riding. The road curved ahead, the sun low in the sky, casting long shadows across the pavement. Behind us, the past. Ahead, endless possibility. The sound of our engines faded around the curve, two people moving forward together, both finally free to be exactly who they were meant to be. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is someone telling you exactly how they feel about your relationship. It saves everyone a lot of time. I learned to listen when people show you who they are, and I learned to believe them the first time. But most importantly, I learned that choosing yourself isn't selfish. Sometimes it's the most honest thing you can do. Dear listeners, that's our ending. If it resonated, subscribe to support the channel. See you next time.
그 대만에서 뽑기 한 건데, 그치. 그때 나 대만 갔을 때 뽑기에서 한 거, 그치. 트래블 카드는 2개. 하고, 하나 할래방, 운전면허증, 나머지. 예? 보빠 금지라고요? 그거 안 타면 되죠? 아니요, 아닐걸? 보빠를 못 갖고 가지는 않을걸요?
그럼 절대 먹지 마. 절대 먹지 마.
야, 세븐이가 드디어 나왔다.
먹지 마.
근데 진짜 한 번만 도와줘. 네? 여기 나 한 번만 도와줘. 140 한 번만 도와줘. 발표났다고? 그러면 어떡해? 형, 한 번만 도와줘.